Hello! Today's case will take us into the dark world of a criminal who has made a name for himself in the crime history of Jiangsu province. In just 2 days, he committed 4 consecutive murders. From an 80-year-old woman to a 6-year-old child, all met tragic deaths under his knife. Let's dive into the case of Jiangsu's #1 demon today. Xia Guolin was born in 1968 in a family of 4 in Jianyang County, Sichuan province. He had an older brother. When Xia Guolin was young, his father passed away, and his mother single-handedly raised both brothers. However, Xia Guolin had a hot temper from a young age, liked fighting, and since his mother was busy all day and didn't have time to care for him, she often had to go apologize to those he bullied. As he grew up, he defied his family's opposition and resolutely dropped out of school, mingling with hooligans day and night. This not only got him into bad habits, but also made him frequently engage in theft and disrupt local order. A few years later, his mother passed away from illness and his brother had his own family. With no one to control him, Xia Guolin became increasingly out of control. In 1987, at the age of 19, Xia Guolin, in a moment of desperation, decided to steal rice from a family in the village. But while he was climbing the wall to break into the house, he was caught by the house owner. However, instead of admitting his fault or asking for forgiveness, Xia Guolin blamed the woman for intentionally not going to work to catch him in the act, which embarrassed him greatly. He then grabbed a wooden stick and injured the woman before fleeing the village. But just a few days after his escape, he was arrested by the police and sentenced to 7 years in prison. During his imprisonment, Xia Guolin didn't reform, but instead constantly thought about how to take revenge on the woman once he was released. Fortunately, thanks to his brother's persistent persuasion, he gave up on that idea. After being released from prison, Xia Guolin temporarily stayed at his brother's house. But he couldn't stand his sister-in-law's contemptuous looks, so he went out to find a job. However, he didn't expect earning money to be so difficult. Especially since he had no education or skills, finding a decent job was almost impossible. Thus, he could only do manual labor to make a living. But with Xia Guolin's lazy nature, it wasn't long before he decided to return to his old ways. Perhaps in his mind, robbing money seemed much easier than working, but on his first attempt, he encountered bad luck. When he aggressively tried to rob someone with a knife, he unexpectedly met a martial artist. After a few punches, Xia Guolin was beaten black and blue. Frightened, he knelt down to beg for mercy and escaped while the person was distracted, thus avoiding another prison sentence. To evade police capture, he changed his name and moved thousands of miles away, working as a laborer in a small coal mine. After a year of hiding, he returned to his hometown with 7,000 yuan. This was probably the cleanest and largest amount of money he had ever earned in his life. Upon his return, with his brother's help, he used the money to open a small bar. It was thought that from then on, he would reform and live a normal life. But unexpectedly, business became increasingly difficult. With his aggressive nature, he once got into a fight with a customer and had to compensate 4,000 yuan in medical expenses. Eventually, the bar went bankrupt. Seeing all his hard-earned money gone, Xia Guolin kept blaming fate for not treating him well. He thought that if he had been born into a rich family, he wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable situation. Over time, he became completely corrupted and finally decided to rebel and take revenge on society. In 1997, Xia Guolin, armed with a short knife, went to various areas in Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Anhui to commit robberies, but never found the right opportunity. Then, he accidentally watched a TV show where the criminal used an axe to commit crimes, and he got the idea to not only rob, but also use an axe to kill people and rob them. One day, in January 1999, Xia Guolin began looking for a target. Shortly after, an 80-year-old woman caught his attention. Her surname was Chen. Despite her age, she liked to dress up and always wore a lot of gold and silver jewelry when she went out. He saw her paying at a store and noticed that her wallet contained 9 100-yuan bills, which aroused his evil intentions. Mrs. Chen, although old, was still very healthy and didn't live with her daughter, a detail that gave him the opportunity to commit his crime. He secretly followed her home and, taking advantage of an unoccupied moment, used an axe to kill her. It was his first murder, and he was a little scared. Just then, the sound of dogs barking outside frightened him into fleeing without taking the valuable possessions on the victim. When he got home, he reflected on the murder process and suddenly felt an unprecedented satisfaction. The feeling was even more thrilling than robbing money. Therefore, a day after killing his first victim, the second and third victims appeared. That day, Xia Guolin killed 2 male workers on Jiangsu Road, one named Bai, 53 years old, and one named Feng, 20 years old. It can be said that in the first case, Xia Guolin did not take the victim's property because he didn't have the time, while in the second case, it was entirely to vent his anger on society. At that time, he followed 2 workers from a restaurant, knowing full well they had no money, but still acted. This was enough to prove that his purpose for killing was not just for money, but also for his own sadistic satisfaction. Just a few hours after killing the 2 workers, Xia Guolin committed his third crime. He sneaked into a house in Fudong village and, seeing a family of 3 laughing and having dinner together, became envious and cruelly killed the couple and their 6-year-old son. Within 26 hours, the city of Yixing had witnessed 3 murder cases with 6 victims meeting tragic deaths. This was considered the most serious case since the establishment of Yixing City and was a rare case that shocked China in 1999. The incident caused great horror among the local residents, making women afraid to go to work or leave work alone, and men also avoided going out at night. Shops closed early, and schools canceled evening classes to ensure the safety of students. There were even rumors at the time that a brutal gang specializing in killing innocent people had appeared in Yixing. This rumor spread to Wuxi, Suzhou, Yangzhou, and even Nanjing, causing widespread panic throughout the area. The police formed a special investigation team dedicated to this case. The largest criminal investigation in the history of Yixing began. Based on the crime scene examination and forensic analysis, the special investigation team found commonalities in the methods, tools, and characteristics of the 3 cases. It was highly likely that the perpetrator of the 3 cases was the same person, so they decided to merge the 3 cases into a single investigation. Through analysis, the police speculated that the killer could be a middle-aged man of medium build, using an axe or a similar tool. Since the crime was meticulously planned and there were no clues at the scene, the police believed the perpetrator might have had prior criminal experience and decided to investigate recent case files. Tens of thousands of notices were issued, TV stations updated the case details daily, and a reward of 50,000 yuan was offered for any information. The special investigation team checked a total of 593 hotels, including mid- and low-grade inns, 2,156 private lodging houses, and inspected 1,924 warehouses and vacant buildings along remote routes throughout the city. Additionally, the investigators went to Nanjing, Anhui, Zhenjiang, Shanghai, and other places, checked 15,975 passing vehicles, and collected over 1 million suspect fingerprints. However, they still couldn't find any trace of this demon. At this point, he had evaded the police and moved south to Jiangsu. Upon arrival, Xia Guolin was penniless, and the lack of money made him restless, so he quickly sought a new target. He attacked and killed 2 students, taking over 100 yuan from them to spend on food and drink. After eating his fill, he went to Luoku town in Leping City, where an infrastructure project was underway, and noticed a makeshift tent on the ground. He decided to go in and take some things, but he couldn't have known that this would be the end of his criminal career. A local mother and her daughter lived in that tent. The mother, Shu Ronghua, was a cook for a construction site, living with her 17-year-old daughter. At night, they slept in the tent on the construction site to guard the equipment. On the night of March 15, 1999, after a day's work, the 2 went to bed early, unaware that great danger was approaching. In the middle of the night, a noise outside the tent woke them up. Xu Ronghua slowly took a flashlight to check. The outside was still dark, and after searching around the construction site, she thought it might have been stray cats or rats causing the noise. So, she returned to the tent, but as she approached the bed, she felt a cold presence behind her. Before she could turn around, the murderer struck her head with an axe. Shocked by the sudden attack, she turned and saw that her attacker was a man and immediately fought back. A woman's strength cannot compare to a man's, but Xu Ronghua was quite exceptional. She grabbed the man's groin and threw him down. After a roar of anger, he charged at her with the axe. Knowing she couldn't fight him off alone, she quickly woke her daughter, Xu Huanhua. However, just as her daughter sat up, Xia Guolin struck her hard on the back of the head and then strangled her, making her unable to breathe. After throwing the daughter aside, he turned to attack Xu Ronghua, but Xu Huanhua miraculously came back to life. She ran and grabbed Xia Guolin's neck. Enraged, he picked up a burning coal and pressed it against Xu Ronghua's neck. Her neck was immediately scorched by the burning coal, but she refused to let go. Using her last bit of strength, she held onto the killer and told her daughter to run for help. Xu Huanhua staggered up after the struggle and took difficult steps towards another construction site about 300 meters away, screaming for help. Quan heard the screams and quickly ran towards the noise. When they arrived, Xia Guolin was holding Xu Ronghua's head, repeatedly smashing it against the ground. She was on the brink of death. Quan swiftly ran over and punched him hard. By this time, the criminal was exhausted and had no strength left to fight. After taking 2 punches, he fell flat on the ground. Quan, not trusting him, continued to punch Xia Guolin in the face until he knelt and desperately begged for mercy. Only then did he stop and immediately call the police. Meanwhile, Xu Ronghua and Xu Huanhua were rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Fortunately, after the incident, both mother and daughter survived. However, Xu Ronghua had 8 large wounds on her head, requiring 68 stitches. Xu Huanhua also had a head wound over 3 centimeters long. Ultimately, the demon Xia Guolin was arrested and brought to trial for attacking and killing 8 people. For the heinous crimes he committed, the court sentenced him to death. Even before his death, Xia Guolin showed no remorse. He continued to believe that life had treated him unfairly, saying that he couldn't make money through work, lost money in business, and even couldn't live a happy and comfortable life through robbery and murder. His death was entirely deserved for such a cold-blooded murderer, but it was a pity for those who had to lose their lives because of him. Each of us, when born and raised, experiences different lives, circumstances, and environments. Some live comfortably, with ample food and clothing, receive proper education, and enjoy material and spiritual conditions. Others are less fortunate. However, in fortune, there is misfortune. In misfortune, there is fortune. Therefore, one should not blame life. Life is finite, and accepting life is also accepting oneself. This concludes our video. What do you think about this case? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to get the latest notifications from our videos.